as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives. And the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them,
Pray that you may not enter into temptation.
and he withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed.
Father, if thou art willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done.
And when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. And he said to them,
Why do you sleep? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation.
While he was still speaking, there came a crowd, and a man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He drew near to Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him,
Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?
and when those saw who were about saw would follow, they said,
Lord, shall we strike with a sword?
and one of them struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said,
No more of this.
and he touched his ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests and officers of the temple and the elders who had come out against him,
Have you come out as against the robber with swords and clubs? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you did not lay hands on me. But this is your hour and the power of darkness.
Then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house. Peter followed at a distance, and when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat among them. Then a maid, seeing him as he sat in the light and gazing at him, said,
This man also is with him.
but he denied it, saying,
Woman, I do not know him.
and a little later someone else saw him and said,
You also are one of them.
but Peter said,
Man, I am not.
and after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying,
Certainly this man also is with him, for he is a Galilean.
but Peter said,
Man, I do not know what you are saying.
and immediately, while he was still speaking, the cock crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, Before the cock crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and wept bitterly. Now the men who were holding Jesus mocked him and beat him. They also blindfolded him and asked him,
Prophesy, who is it that struck you?
and they spoke many other words against him, reviling him. When day came, the assembly of the elders of the people gathered together, both chief priests and scribes, and they led him away to their council. And they said,
If you are the Christ, tell us.
but he said to them,
If I tell you, you will not believe. If I ask you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man shall be seated at the right hand of the power of God.
and they said,
Are you the Son of God then?
and he said to them,
You say that I am.
and they said,
What further testimony do we need? We've heard it from ourselves from his own lips.
Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying,
We found this man forbidding our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ the King.
and Pilate asked him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
and he answered him.
You have said so.
And Pilate said to the chief priests and the multitudes,
I find no crime in this man.
but they were urgent, saying,
He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place.
When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad. He had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him and was hoping to see some sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then arraying him in glorious apparel, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day. For before this they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them,
You brought me this man as one who was perverting the people, and after examining them before you, behold, I do not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent it back to us. Behold, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore chastise him and release him.
But they cried out together.
Away with this man, and release to us Barabbas.
A man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection, starting in the city, and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they shouted out,
Crucify him! Crucify him!
The third time he said to them,
Why, what evil has he done? I have found in him no crime deserving death. I will therefore chastise him and release him.
but they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave sentence that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, whom they asked for, but Jesus he delivered up to their will. And as they led him away, they seized one Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and laid on him the cross to carry it behind Jesus. And there followed him a great multitude of people, and of women who bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning to them, said,
Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never sucked. Then they would begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?
2 others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. Please stand. And when they came to the place which is called the skull, where they crucified him, and the criminals, one on the right and one on the left, and Jesus said,
Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
And they cast lots to divide his garments, and the people stood by, watching. But the rulers scoffed at him, saying,
He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ of God, his chosen one.
The soldiers also mocked him, coming up and offering him vinegar and saying,
If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself.
and there was also an inscription over him, This is the King of the Jews. One of the criminals who were hanged railed at him, saying,
Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us.
but the other rebuked him, saying,
Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence for condemnation? And we indeed justly, but we are receiving the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong.
and he said,
Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
and he said to him,
Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise.
It was now about the 6th hour, when there was darkness over the whole land, until the 9th hour, while the sun's light failed, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said,
Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit.
and having said this, he breathed his last. Now when the centurion saw what had taken place, he praised God and said,
Certainly this man was innocent.
and all the multitudes were assembled to see the sight, when they saw what had taken place, returned home beating their breasts. And all his acquaintances and the women who had followed him from Galilee stood at a distance and saw these things. Now there was a man named Joseph from the Jewish town of Arimathea. He was a member of the council, a good and righteous man, who had not consented to their purpose in vain, and he was not convicted in a thought. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then he took it down and wrapped it in a linen shroud and laid him in a rocky tomb where no one had ever yet been laid. It was the day of preparation on the Sabbath. The women who had come with him from Galilee followed and saw the tomb and how his body was laid. Then they returned and prepared spices for him. He was set and rested according to the commandment.